Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I want to show you some quilting ideas I have for the Hawaiian print quilt. Now I am working in my office because it's summer and the air is just running continuously and it's just too noisy down in the studio to film, so I'm under different lighting in a very cramped spot, but I think we can make this work. So I'm going to adjust the camera and I'll show you some of the ideas that I have. Okay, I think I have things adjusted pretty well. What I have here is a sample quilt. I just made 4 blocks and put them together, and this is just easier to work with than the large Hawaiian print quilt top, because that one is fairly large. It's 96 by like 114, so it's pretty large. But anyway, I've got a ruler to work with, a bunch of dry erase markers, got a tissue to help erase marks, and I've got a plastic sheet over the quilt top. And this is a drawing board that I have sitting over on a little computer table. This is really small, so but that's all I have room for in this room. So anyway, this is the okay, so here is the quilt top, and the block, of course we have the outside edge and it goes up to this block here and then comes across. There is only 6 pieces in this, and they're large. The whole block is 18 inches, so this block is 12. This piece is 6 by 12 and this is 6 by 6. So we've got some large pieces. Now what I did was I went on my computer and I drew out some worksheets to use, and this is the outline of the quilt design. And then I started doodling with a pencil, just a regular old school pencil, some of the designs that I liked. And so I want to show you what I am thinking of doing in this top. Now I'm going to let me put those aside so I have more room. Okay, I'm going to start with the big block, and with this pattern, with these pieces in the pattern, it gives motion to the quilt design, and it makes the blocks look like they're kind of turned. So I wanted to use some straight lines in here because of all the beautiful print, the Hawaiian prints. I don't want to cover them up with a lot of heavy quilting. So and since it's a busy design, doing something like feathers isn't going to show in here, so I don't want to waste my time quilting something in that I'm not going to be able to see. So let's start with a square in the square design, and I have got to find the centers on each side, so that this is a 12-inch block, so that would be 6 inches. And I'm going to come in just a little bit because I still have that 1/4 inch seam allowance there. So when you're marking this on your quilt, when you're quilting, you don't need to draw the lines. You just need to mark the dots, and that will get you, that's about all you need. And then you just line up your ruler and then just run your hopping foot right down the edge of your ruler. So, but I'm going to draw it, and this is how I would be quilting it. And okay, now when I get to this point, I would just backtrack to the center here. So we have to find the center, and this is 8.5. So let's go to 4 1/4, which would be right here. And I'm going to mark 4 1/4 on each side. And you don't have to be extremely precise, but what I would do is when I got to this point, I would backtrack to here, and then I would connect the next set of dots. And then when I get to here, I would do the same thing and I would backtrack. Now to get to the center of these, you just need to, you can go from point to point here and then just mark those. and then you can turn and do it the same way. Now why I didn't do it on this one is because my ruler won't reach all the way across, and then I would just be guessing where those are. So if I ended here, I'd backtrack to here and then just go around and just make as many rows as you want. There's no law that says you have to put in 3 or 4 or 5 rows, however many you want. Now what I would do is I would go probably 2 more rows in here, and then I have these spaces here, and what I would do, this should be 6 inches, so I'm going to go in 3 inches on each side, and then I'm just going to connect the dots again. So I'm going to do that on each side, and right now I am just guessing where that is, but I would measure this out so that it looks symmetrical. So we would have this design, and then let's just go ahead and see if I can draw this halfway decently in, backtrack, and then go to the next. So something like that. Now another thing I could do is to cash in on this tilted look, and we could quilt that kind of effect into this square. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this and do some different marking. Now what I like to do when I am wanting to kind of get things halfway even on a block is I want to be able to divide a block by a number evenly. So this is a 12-inch block that can be divided by 2, 3, 4, or 6 evenly. So I'm going to choose 3 inches, and I'm going to go up from each edge, and I'm going to come in 3 inches. And on this one I'm going to do about 3 1/4, because I have that 1/4 inch there as my seam allowance there that hasn't been taken up yet. And then we'll come over here, do another 3 inches, and now I'm just going to meet these points. And that, I just think that being able to divide it evenly just gives a better look, and that's just my own preference. Like I said, there is no law for this, there's no rules, it's just what you think looks good. Now I can use that 3-inch measurement, or I can change it, and I think what I want to do on this one is maybe go let's go 2 1/2. And I am reaching around a lamp here, so it's not only blocking my line of sight, it's kind of in the way of my arms, so it's a bit challenging. I have, this is a small bedroom, this is the smallest bedroom in the house. It's only about 8 by 8 feet, and I have a set of bunk beds in here, so that's taking up almost half of the room. So it's a challenge, but eventually we'll get these bunk beds down and I'll have more room. So let's go 2 inches on this round. And then we're just going to quilt around. And then just keep going with this design. Now another thing you can do with this design here is you could do a background filler in like every other round if you want to add more quilting and put more dimension in there, or you could just let it go. And I think I'm just going to leave it go. Of course, when I get the quilt on the machine and I start quilting, I may change my mind. I could change my mind about the whole design concept and quilt something completely different. I just don't know. Okay, for this square here, what I thought I would do is just do some cross hatching, but I don't want it to be denser here than it is here, so it's going to be kind of a light cross hatching. So I'm just going to go from corner to corner to start with. So we have this, and then need to find the centers of the sides. If you hear some watery type noise in the background, that's my aquarium. I am running an aquarium in here too, so I've got that going in the background. So this is probably about all I would do. This will give about 2-inch squares. Yeah. So I think I'll leave it at that, at least for the time being. What I'd like to do is to balance the quilting throughout the whole quilt, because if I quilt this really loosely and then quilt this densely, it's going to look off and it's going to feel different. The quilt will feel different. If you've ever done that with a quilt or seen a quilt like that, if you pick up the quilt and just kind of hold it in your hands where the quilting is loose, it's going to feel more fluid. It's going to feel softer. This is going to feel stiff and in the area that's dense. And if you have a quilt that you are washing, it's going to it may pull up more in the area that's densely quilted than it will here, and then your quilt will no longer lie flat. It's going to be puckered in places. So that's one of the many reasons why I try to keep my quilting balanced. Now my challenge is going to be what I do in here, because what I'm doing in here is going to be a little bit denser than in here, so I've got to figure out how to balance this out. So what I want to do in here is I want to put a feather next to the block, because on the Hawaiian quilt the light fabric is next to the block, into the big block, instead of the dark like we have here. So these colors are reversed. So I want the feather next to here to kind of break up some straight lines, and because I want the feathers to show. If I'm going to put in feathers, I want them to show, so I'm going to put them in the white fabric. And then I'm going to put in some swirls in the dark fabric, because the dark fabric is already a swirl type pattern, and so I just want to copy that. So in the dark, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here at this point, and then I'm going to quilt swirls in to just kind of fit the space that I have. Like that. So I'm just going to do big swirls, and then in here I'm going to do a feather, and I'm going to see if I can do this, because I'm going to have to do this upside down, and I am going to turn my design here so I can see. So I'm going to start, it starts in the, well, let's do it this way. Okay, we're going to start here, come out to the side, hit that side, come around, and then do a purl. And this is going to be kind of light feathers, so I'm not going to fill this really densely, and I'm going to put big feathers in. So we're going to do a little purl at the end and some big feathers. Now that's going to be a challenge for me, because I tend to quilt small feathers. So when I get this in quilted and backtrack down, and then put a purl in here and more big feathers. So I want to fill the space, but I want my feathers to be fairly large. So that will be the feather. But if you look at this amount of quilting and this amount of quilting, this is going to be denser. So to offset that, I'm going to put more rows in here. So let's do, I think that was 2 inches. Let's do another 2 inches on this one. And we'll quilt around again. And then we're just going to keep going. And I think I'll go 1.5 on this one, since the squares are getting smaller, then the rectangles or the triangles should be getting smaller. So let's do 1.5. And this is kind of a neat design. Now I haven't quilted this a whole lot. I've actually pieced blocks in this design, and they look pretty cool. And so this adds more quilting. I could quilt a motif in here, like I could do a daisy, or I could do a little feather. And you know, there's lots of different things we could do in there. I could just do a swirl. And then for this, I could also cut this a little bit more. So let's put in another. I've got things shifting on me here. Let me see if I can straighten that out. So let's just add an extra line here to add more quilting. I could also do a background fill in there. And things that you could do is like you could do some pebbles. And you could just do one size pebbles. You could do small and large. Just whatever you need to fill up the space, and however you want to quilt them. You could do some stacked swirls, and let me do that over here. So I would just come in with a swirl. And with stacked swirls, when you hit a line of quilting or the end of your block, you just stop, and then you backtrack, and then you come back. So I'm going to come here and do another swirl. And then another little one in here. So you could do something like that. You could do a wishbone. You do a ribbon candy. There's lots of different things you can do in there. You could make tavish, you could do stippling. There's lots of different things you could do. So those are the ideas that I have for this block at this point. Now another thing I considered doing was just doing some quilting along here, maybe going in about a 1/2 inch or so. And just follow along the quilting lines and just kind of echoing that. You could do something like that. You could do a Greek key, like I just keep going around in a circle, or a rectangle, or a triangle, because that's what that is. It's kind of, well, I guess it's a rectangle. It has 4 sides. So there's lots of different things you could do. And here you could also put a filler if you'd want to just do a stipple. And I would do that maybe in every other block, in the opposite blocks here. And like maybe do it in here and here. And then you're getting into more dense quilting. Now my goal for this quilt, since I don't want it in that one, do I? I want it over here. My goal for this quilt is to have some quilting that's fairly quick, because the piecing was quick, and my last quilt was more complex. There was a lot of quilting in it. It took a long time. It took me a month to get that quilt done, and I don't want to put another month into the next quilt. So I want to make it fairly quick, yet I want it to be pretty, and I want it to be functional so that it holds everything together. And I don't want it to look like it's a rush job. I want it to look nice. So these are the ideas that I have for the moment for this quilt. And as I said before, when I get it on the machine, I may change my mind and just do something completely different. So anyway, those are the ideas that I have, and I hope it gave you some ideas of things that you could do on a quilt like this. Now, when I was researching this pattern, there were quite a few completed quilts on the internet with this pattern. All of them were just pantographs. So that looks fine on this quilt. That's certainly an option. I personally don't like quilting pantographs. I like the look of them. I just don't like to quilt them. And I think that's because when I first started, and the first thing that I learned to do was a pantograph, which was great. What I found was that my machine did not have a thread sensor on it, and I'd be quilting away and get to the end of the row and look back and realize that 3/4 of that row had no thread in it. I had been quilting with an empty bobbin, and it was just a huge waste of time. And there was no way at that point for me to know when the bobbin was going to go empty. So, and you can't, when you're quilting from the back of the machine, you can't continue quilting and look at the front of your machine and see what's going on there. It's just not possible. So you have to stop and see what's going on and then start again. And then that kind of messes up the flow. Sometimes you can see those stops and starts, and it's, it was just a problem. Well, my machine's been upgraded and it does have a thread sensor on it now, so that wouldn't be a problem, but I just got to where I did not like doing pantographs. So I may have to change my mind one of these days and just break down and start doing them again, but I haven't done one in a very long time, and I don't see one coming any time in the near future, but it may. So that is my ideas for this quilt at this point, and I'm going to try and get it on the machine this weekend and get started on it. I'll see how that goes, and but I'll show you that when I get it done. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.
Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my newest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.